That moment should have crushed me, but instead, it gave me the most satisfying out I could have asked for. My name's Carter Langston. I'm 33 years old, living in Austin, Texas. This all went down about 4 months back, on a Monday morning that started like any other. Stale coffee, fluorescent lights, and the sound of keyboards tapping like machine gun fire. Rita Malden, my manager at Turbine Metrics, stood at the front of the office with that sharp little smirk she wore whenever she was about to make an example out of someone. "Langston," she said, waving me over. Her voice carried across the room, loud enough for the whole floor to turn and watch. I knew what this was about. The audit. I had spent the last 2 weekends combing through every single client interaction I'd had over the past year. The calls, the emails, the personal notes. It was 58 pages of proof that my way of doing things worked. I didn't just handle clients. I kept them. I built relationships. And that's why we were still landing contracts while other teams were tanking. Rita didn't care about that. In her mind, I was slow and inefficient. She wanted me to be a spreadsheet robot like everyone else, not the guy who remembered that Mr. Perkins' kid just started college, or that Marcy from the Chicago account hates being called after 4 p.m. I walked up to her desk, and there it was. My audit open on her monitor. She didn't even look at me when she said, "This is irrelevant data clogging the system." Then, with one dramatic click, she selected all 58 pages from the shared drive and hit delete. Gone. Just like that. You could have heard a pin drop. 27 people froze in their chairs, pretending not to watch, but watching anyway. My stomach sank. All those hours of work, my entire record of client strategies, erased in 10 seconds. "You're welcome," she added, like she'd just done me a favor. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I wasn't angry yet. I was stunned. That file wasn't just documentation. It was the backbone of our accounts. The conversations, the trust, the little details that made our clients feel like we weren't just milking them for revenue. Without that record, we'd be flying blind. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, still in a daze. A new email subject line glared back at me. Offer letter, Lindell Partners. I clicked it open, my heart pounding. A salary of $470,000. A 3% stake in their startup. And a note at the bottom that read, "We've been following your client work for months. We'd like you to lead our strategy team, starting as soon as possible." 30 seconds after Rita hit delete, I was holding my exit in my hands. I looked up at her. She was still talking, saying something about resetting professional tone and removing inefficiency, but I barely heard her. All I could think was, you just burned your only safety net. Because here's the thing, what she destroyed wasn't just a file. It was the proof that my way of doing things worked, and without me, she had nothing left to stand on. 18 months earlier, I joined Turbine Metrics as a client integration lead. The title sounded bland, but I needed a paycheck, and they were willing to pay enough to make me stay for at least a while. I should have noticed the red flags sooner. The guy who had the job before me lasted 5 months before he ghosted the entire department. He didn't give 2 weeks' notice, didn't even send an email, just vanished. On my first day, Rita Malden, my direct manager, greeted me with her trademark fake smile. "Keep it transactional," she said, tapping her pen against a stack of spreadsheets. "We don't have time for small talk with clients. Just log your calls, stick to the scripts, and keep it efficient." Her whole philosophy boiled down to speed, short calls, quick data entries, and minimal human interaction. She wanted our clients to feel like numbers on a spreadsheet, and most of the team went along with it because they didn't want to rock the boat. At first, I went along too. I'd just come off a rough layoff and couldn't risk losing another job. But after a few months, I noticed something everyone else seemed to ignore. Clients were disappearing, contracts were expiring and not getting renewed. Accounts that used to be steady were slipping away. It wasn't subtle. It was a bleed out, and nobody was talking about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. These weren't bad clients. They just didn't feel any loyalty to us. Why would they? Every interaction they had with Turbine felt cold, mechanical, like they were just another checkmark in a CRM database. So I started trying something different. I didn't announce it to anyone. I didn't even tell Rita. I just started caring. I'd jot down little details during calls. A client's kid starting kindergarten, a wedding anniversary, even small stuff like someone's favorite coffee order. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. I just treated them like actual people instead of quarterly revenue targets. At first, it felt almost silly, writing things like, send congrats on promotion or ask about dog surgery in my notes. But then clients started calling back, not just responding to emails, but picking up the phone and asking for me directly. Some even bypassed the company's main line altogether, using my personal extension. It was harmless stuff, until Rita caught wind of it. I still remember the day she walked past my desk and saw my sticky notes lined up like a crime scene. She stopped, squinted, and said, "What is all this? Birthdays? Pets? Carter, you're not running a social club." But I didn't stop. Because within 4 months of doing things my way, client satisfaction jumped by 40%. We were signing extensions without even pushing for them. Clients were referring their friends and business partners to us, saying things like, "Call Carter, he actually listens." The more our numbers improved, the more Rita seemed to hate me. She never said it outright, but I could feel it in every team meeting. She wanted credit for the turnaround, but my methods didn't fit her narrative of cold efficiency, and that, I learned quickly, was going to be a problem. The side eyes started small. A glance here, a raised eyebrow there, mostly during team meetings when I'd share updates on my accounts. At first I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was just too paranoid about my unconventional approach. But when Rita Malden, queen of the spreadsheet warriors, called me into her office one Tuesday morning, I knew I wasn't imagining anything. Her office always felt like a holding cell, sterile, with gray walls and a single-framed certificate of some management award she'd probably bought online. She was sitting behind her desk, her red pen tapping on a stack of printouts. Without looking up, she said, "Do you know why you're here?" I glanced at the papers, my call logs. Every call I'd made in the past 3 months, highlighted and marked up like I was a suspect in an interrogation. "I'm guessing it's not because you want to thank me," I said. She gave a sharp laugh. "Cute. Why are you spending 50 minutes on a 10-minute follow-up call?" She stabbed her pen at the page like each highlight was evidence of a crime. "Do you think we're running a charity? This is a metrics-based business, Carter. We live and die by time management." I took a breath and tried to stay calm. "Rita, do you know why our top clients have renewed for another year, or why 3 of them referred new accounts last quarter?" I pulled a folder from under my arm. I'd been prepared for this. It's because I actually talked to them. I know their pain points. I know what they're trying to build, and I remember the details that matter to them. This, I tapped my own notes, is why we're up over $180,000 in retained and new business. She barely even glanced at it. "That's anecdotal," she said, her tone dismissive. "We don't need personal notes about someone's dog surgery. We need efficiency." "Efficiency?" I repeated. "We've been bleeding contracts for months because nobody wants to feel like they're talking to a robot. This isn't just about numbers. It's about relationships." She rolled her eyes and leaned back in her chair. "I'm not interested in your philosophy lecture, Carter. What I am interested in is clarity, which is why I'm assigning you a special project." She slid a folder across the desk toward me. "I want a full audit of every client interaction you've had this year, every call, every email, every touch point. I want to know exactly how you're spending your time." I picked up the folder. It was a punishment, and we both knew it. "So, you want me to justify my existence," I said flatly. "If that's how you want to look at it," she said with a smug little smile. I walked out of her office feeling like I'd been sucker punched, but I did the audit. 58 pages, meticulously detailed, showing every interaction I'd handled, every dollar it brought in, and the direct impact it had on client retention. I thought, for one stupid moment, that she'd see the value in it. I was wrong. That audit would become the weapon she used to take me down in front of everyone. Monday morning, team reviews were usually boring, but that one felt like a public execution. Rita stood at the front of the conference room, my 58-page audit projected on the big screen for all 27 people to see. I had spent weeks on that report, detailing every client interaction, the referrals that had come from them, and how it all translated into over $180,000 in extra business for the firm. "This," she announced, holding a printout like it was contaminated, "is a prime example of wasted potential. I sat in the second row, my hands clasped under the table, trying not to react. My name was plastered on every page of that report, but she wasn't highlighting my results. She was highlighting every personal note I had written to clients, the same details that kept them coming back. Asked about dog surgery. She read the line with exaggerated disbelief. "We are not veterinarians, Carter." A few people chuckled nervously, but most of the room stayed dead quiet. Rita wasn't done. Here's another one. Sent congratulations on kids' graduation. Do you think emotional labor is part of your job description? It's part of why our clients stay, I muttered under my breath. But she heard me. Excuse me? She whipped around, narrowing her eyes. I cleared my throat. That's why they renew, because they feel like someone's paying attention. She ignored me and clicked to the next slide. These calls, 50 minutes long, when 10 would do. This is not client service. This is unprofessional indulgence, and it's costing us time and resources. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to argue, to tell everyone that this wasn't indulgence. It was the very thing keeping our accounts alive. But Rita wasn't looking for answers. She was building a case against me, line by line, mocking everything I had done. Then came the final blow. "This audit is cluttering up our shared drive," she said with a dismissive wave. "Irrelevant data." Before I could react, she moved the cursor to the file, clicked delete, and it was gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone stared at the screen, then at me, like they weren't sure whether to say something or pretend they hadn't just watched my entire year's work get erased. Rita crossed her arms, looking proud of herself. "Now," she said, "let's talk about how we can all reset our professional tone." I don't know if I heard anything else she said because, at that exact moment, my phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it during a meeting, but something made me pick it up. Maybe it was pure instinct. "Carter Langston?" a man's voice asked. "This is Ethan Cole from Lindell Partners. We've been watching your client retention numbers. Would you have time to discuss leading our strategy team? We're prepared to offer a base of $470,000 plus equity." I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. All I could hear was Rita's voice in the background, droning on about resetting workflows, while this guy casually offered me a future. "Can you send me the details?" I finally asked, my voice low. "Check your inbox," he said. "The offer letter's already there." By the time I hung up, I had a signed contract waiting for me. Rita thought she had humiliated me. What she didn't realize was that she just handed me my perfect exit. Rita was still talking when I returned to the conference room, something about resetting professional tone and aligning workflows. Her voice carried that smug confidence that came from believing she had just humiliated me into compliance. I waited until she finished her latest lecture on efficiency. Then I stood up. "I actually have something to announce," I said, my voice loud enough for the back row to hear. Every head turned toward me, curiosity flickering across their faces. Rita's smile faltered. "Carter, this isn't the time." "No, this is exactly the time." I walked to the front of the room, the contract from Lindell Partners pulled up on my phone. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from Turbine Metrics. A few people gasped. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Rita blinked, clearly caught off guard. "You can't just quit in the middle of a team review," she said, her tone sharp and defensive. "Oh, I can," I replied, holding up my phone. "I just signed a contract to lead client strategy at Lindell Partners. Salary's double what Turbine pays me, plus a 3% equity stake." The room went dead silent. I could feel every set of eyes locked on me, their expressions a mix of shock and awe. I scrolled to the signature page on my phone and turned it toward them. I'm done here. No hard feelings. But I'm not sticking around for another lecture about how caring about people is unprofessional. Rita's face turned the color of a bad sunburn. "You can't just walk out without proper HR channels. We have protocols." "Yeah," I said. "We also have an HR clause for hostile work environments, and you've just checked every box for that. So, no, I don't need 2 weeks' notice. I'm invoking the clause. Effective now, I'm gone." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked around the room for backup, maybe hoping someone would defend her. No one did. Even our CEO, Devin Marston, who had been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, didn't say a word. He just leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. Maybe he knew it was better to let this play out than to wade into the mess Rita had made. I picked up my notebook from the table and walked toward the door. "Best of luck," I said, glancing at my former teammates. "You're gonna need it." Rita tried to recover some authority as I left. "This is highly unprofessional, Carter. You'll regret this." I turned in the doorway. "No, Rita. What's unprofessional is deleting the work that was keeping this company's accounts afloat. You just erased your only safety net." I left the room to complete silence. Not one person tried to stop me. That was the moment I realized how done everyone was with her, even if they weren't brave enough to say it out loud. My first 3 days at Lindell Partners felt like stepping out of a storm and into clean, open air. There were no tense stand-ups where every second was timed, no managers circling like vultures waiting for a slip-up. The team actually wanted to hear my ideas. They'd hired me because of the way I worked, not in spite of it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was swimming against the current. I hadn't even settled into my new office chair when the first call came in. It was Vernon, the guy who ran a regional hardware supply chain. He didn't even bother with small talk. "Heard you jumped ship, Carter," he said, his voice half amused, half relieved. "Good move. I was just about to call Turbine and tell them to lose my number." I laughed. "Guess I got out just in time." "You got somewhere new to land my account?" he asked, like he already knew the answer. "Yeah," I said, glancing at the Lindell logo on my new business card. "I do." That was just day one. By day 3, I'd heard from 5 old clients, all of them reaching out on their own, no prompting from me. They had found me through LinkedIn updates, industry chatter, or in one case through Vernon, who apparently wasted no time telling everyone I'd left Turbine. Constance, who ran a boutique textile firm, was the most blunt. "I don't want to deal with whoever Rita assigned to us," she said. "That woman treated every call like a speed date. She didn't even know what our company does. How fast can we switch over to you?" I reminded her that I hadn't contacted anyone. I wasn't about to be accused of poaching. But the truth was, I didn't need to lift a finger. My relationships were stronger than the Turbine brand itself. All I did was answer the phone. By Friday, Lindell's leadership was staring at me like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. $90,000 in new contracts were already signed, all from clients I'd once managed under Turbine. And this was just the start. When I told my new boss, Alan, that I hadn't done any active outreach, he grinned. "That's because they trust you, not a logo. That's worth more than any marketing campaign." It hit me then just how backward Turbine's philosophy had been. Rita had seen my approach as inefficiency, but the reality was I'd built something they couldn't replicate with scripts and CRM dashboards. Turbine hadn't just lost me. They'd lost the only thing keeping their client base from collapsing. That weekend, I sat on my balcony with a beer, my phone buzzing every few minutes with emails from people who wanted to explore options now that I was with Lindell. I didn't even need to reply right away. I just stared out at the city lights, smiling to myself. I wasn't recruiting anyone. I didn't have to. They were coming to me because I had earned something Rita never understood: trust. It didn't take long for word to get back to me. About 3 weeks after I left Turbine, whispers started filtering through the industry grapevine. Contracts were evaporating. Clients were reviewing their options. The company was in panic mode. I wasn't surprised. Rita's idea of client management was cutting calls short and cramming everything into rigid scripts. It might have looked efficient on paper, but without the relationship groundwork I'd laid, those accounts were held together with duct tape. One afternoon, I got a call from Vernon, the hardware supply guy. He didn't even bother with a hello. "Your old place is bleeding out," he said. "They tried to hand me off to some kid who couldn't remember my order history. I told them I'd rather pay a premium somewhere else." I laughed. "You didn't mention my name, did you?" "Of course I did," he said. "I told them you were the reason I stuck around. Without you, they don't have a clue." He wasn't the only one. Constance from the textile firm told me Rita herself had tried to win her back. "She called me twice," Constance said. "First to reassure me they were better than ever, and then to suggest you'd been manipulative." Constance actually laughed at that. If remembering my kid's name is manipulation, sign me up. It was almost sad. Rita was scrambling, but the harder she pushed, the worse it got. I heard through an ex-colleague that she'd been chewed out in back-to-back leadership meetings. Clients were dropping faster than they could replace them. At one point, they lost 3 contracts in a single week. 2 of them accounts I'd originally brought back from the brink. But the real kicker came when I saw an internal memo someone leaked to me. 14 of their top 22 clients had either switched to competitors or announced plans not to renew. 60 days, that's all it took for the numbers to crater. Rita didn't know how to explain it. She tried spinning this narrative that I had poached clients. But the truth was, I hadn't reached out to a single one. I didn't need to. They'd all seen how little Turbine valued them once I was gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rita thought I was wasting time when I asked clients about their dogs, or sent a quick congrats for a business milestone. But when those small touches disappeared, people noticed. That wasn't inefficiency. That was the glue. I won't lie. I took a certain satisfaction in hearing how quickly things were unraveling. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was just validation. Proof that all the things Rita mocked me for were the only things keeping their house of cards standing. One night, I got an email from a former coworker. You won't believe this, but she's blaming legacy inefficiencies, aka you, for the client losses. People aren't buying it. Of course they weren't. Everyone knew the truth by now. 2 months after I left Turbine, I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of sketching out a long-term client strategy for Lindell when my phone buzzed with a number I recognized but hadn't seen in months. Devin Marston. Turbine's CEO. For a second, I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Carter Langston, I said, leaning back in my chair. Carter, it's Devin, he said, his voice low and careful, like he was stepping onto a cracked floor. I was hoping we could talk. Off the record. Sure, I said. What's on your mind? There was a pause. I'll get straight to it. Turbine's been struggling. We're losing clients. Fast. I think we both know why. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I was wondering, he continued, if Lindell might consider some sort of partnership arrangement, a joint acquisition of key accounts, something that could help stabilize both sides. I almost laughed. Devin, Lindell's doing just fine on its own. We don't need to buy back the clients you lost. He sighed. I could almost picture him running a hand over his face, sitting in that corner office where I'd spent so many hours defending my work. Then let me ask you something else, he said. What would it take to bring you back? Director of Client Ops, full autonomy, no interference from Rita or anyone else. Name your price. For a brief moment, I let the silence hang. Maybe a part of me wanted to savor the irony. This was the same guy who'd once told me to trust Rita's process when I suggested changes. Now, he sounded like someone who'd just watched his ship hit an iceberg. I appreciate the offer, I finally said, but I'm where I belong. Lindell gets it. They value what I do. I'm not coming back to rebuild what you let her tear down. He didn't argue. He just let out a long breath, the kind of exhale that sounded heavier than words. We should have listened sooner, he said quietly. Yeah, I said. You should have. 2 weeks later, I heard from a former colleague that Rita was let go during a strategic realignment. Translation. They finally realized she'd burned the whole house down. I didn't gloat, not out loud anyway. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy hearing it. After all, I didn't have to lift a finger. Rita's own arrogance did all the work. For me, that call from Devin was more than just validation. It was the moment I knew I'd built something bigger than a paycheck. I wasn't just doing my job anymore. I was shaping how the industry would look moving forward, and Turbine was stuck watching it happen from the sidelines. A year later, I was sitting in my corner office at Lindell Partners, looking out over downtown Austin. The title on my door read, Vice President of Client Strategy, and I owned a piece of the firm, a stake that would have been unthinkable back when I was just another cog at Turbine Metrics. It felt surreal. Our division had grown faster than anyone predicted. The personalized, relationship-first approach I had fought so hard to defend wasn't just working. It was outperforming every metric the industry thought mattered. Retention rates were higher than they'd ever been. Referrals were pouring in without us spending a cent on ads. Clients were staying, not because we tied them down with long contracts, but because they wanted to. The best part? Competitors were scrambling to copy us. I'd see articles on LinkedIn about innovative client connection methods, all written by consultants who had probably dismissed this approach a few years ago. Every time I read one, I couldn't help but think of Rita, standing in that conference room, calling my methods emotional labor not aligned with client goals. Funny how things change. Turbine, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. 6 months after I left, the company was acquired by a firm out of Chicago that ran everything through AI dashboards and rigid automation workflows. The personal touch was gone, replaced by cookie-cutter reports and chatbot-style communication. Most of Turbine's remaining clients either jumped ship or got absorbed into the new structure. I didn't celebrate, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like poetic justice. As for Rita, she vanished from the industry almost overnight. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to land another leadership role, but no one wanted to touch her after Turbine's meltdown. Last I saw, she was freelancing as a compliance trainer for mid-tier firms, a far cry from the power she once flaunted. There was a certain irony in it all. She'd spent so much time trying to erase the value of my work, and now, the very things she mocked had become the gold standard. Even Lindell's CEO admitted it during a board meeting. "What you built here isn't just a strategy," Alan said. "It's a culture, and everyone else is playing catch-up." That stuck with me, because for all the years I'd been told to stick to the script or stay transactional, I'd finally proven that clients don't want to be just another number in a CRM. They want to feel seen, heard, and remembered. That's what kept them loyal. That's what turned a shaky startup like Lindell into a serious player. One night, as I locked up the office, I thought back to the moment Rita deleted my files, the click of that mouse like a gunshot in my memory. She thought she was burying me that day. What she really did was give me the freedom to build something bigger, something that would outlast both of us. I never went looking for revenge. I didn't need a lawsuit, a scathing LinkedIn post, or a public takedown. All I needed was time for Rita's arrogance to do exactly what I knew it would, eat her from the inside out. Now, whenever I walk into a meeting, it's on my terms. The clients who sit across from me aren't just accounts, they're people I respect, who trust me because I've taken the time to earn that trust. My team at Lindell doesn't run on fear or scripts. We run on connection, and it works. I think back to the day she deleted my files, how sure she was that she'd made some power move. She thought erasing those records would prove a point, that my way didn't matter. Instead, all she proved was how irreplaceable those connections really were. When I left, the clients didn't stay with Turbine. They followed the person who remembered what made them feel valued. That wasn't an accident. That was the whole point. Every once in a while, I'll hear her name come up. A friend of a friend will mention that Rita's doing contract compliance training now, floating between mid-tier firms that don't know her reputation. I don't smile when I hear it, but I also don't feel sorry for her. She built that fall all by herself. People sometimes ask me if I ever considered getting even with her, maybe sharing my side of the story publicly or calling her out for what she did. But what would that even accomplish? Turbine is a ghost of what it used to be. Rita's name is a footnote, while the approach she mocked is becoming an industry case study for how to build lasting client relationships. My success is the only statement I'll ever need to make. The truth is, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's thriving in the exact way someone told you that you couldn't. It's walking away from a fire and watching it burn itself out, knowing you don't have to lift a finger. I learned something from all of this. You don't need to fight fire with fire. Sometimes the smartest move is to let someone's own ego do the heavy lifting. Rita thought I was wasting time, that I was inefficient, that I didn't get the bigger picture. Turns out, she was the one who didn't get it. Now, every day I come to work, I'm reminded of how wrong she was, not in a petty way, but in the quiet, satisfying way that comes with knowing you built something real, something that lasts. And honestly, that's the only kind of revenge I ever wanted.